Hello, what is up? Facebook and YouTube. I'm doing both of them. Anyway, not live, just recording it and putting it up whenever it goes up. So, lovely evening. Welcome here to Thursday night Course in Miracles at the St. Pete, Florida, USA, Temple of the Living God. Gonzalo here, giving you a December end of year course. Just kind of reviewing the course group that we had tonight. Had a wonderful, deep sharing. Very open, very honest, and that's been the spirit of what we want to share and make space for moving forward on a more deeply welcoming, authentic, genuine, open arms, non judgmental, safe space for open sharing, open exposing of the ego's hangups, exposing of the ego's guilt, exposing of the ego's shame, so we can get closer and closer to actually believing that the light is who we are. We can say it, we can read it, we can go to course group, but unless we really bring our hangups, our guilts, our fears, our shames to the light of the Holy Spirit and ask to be shown the truth of what we're holding on to, then we won't ever be able to go past it. Talk tonight about the key to unlocking this matrix of the world, this conglomeration of uh, beliefs that we accumulate as the world, is twofold. Going through the security door of guilt, because here in the world we've come to believe that we must hold on to guilt to somehow be normal, and to somehow that it's serving us in some way to hold on to guilt and look at the past as being permanent and us as being tied to the past. And twofold, to actually go into the door of innocence and experience innocence on a continually deeper level. We all agree here in the world that children are innocent, but somehow along the way we start identifying ourselves as grown-ups as being guilty SOBs who, by the way, actually learn and believe and ingrain that we deserve to suffer because we're so guilty. See the setup? We actually believe and ingrain that we deserve to suffer. So guess what our lives look like? Full of suffering. We believe and ingrain because of our guilt filled identity and because of our sinful belief in ourselves that we deserve to have continual struggle and drama and trauma, and that we deserve to suffer. And that's why our lives look the way they look, and we've accepted it as normal here in the world. So remember, the only guide, our guiding principles here, you don't have to believe, agree, or accept anything I'm sharing. We're just here to share what Jesus in the Course in Miracles is sharing with us. We're not trying to preach or force anything on you. No conditions to that. Not here to debate or intellectualize, because that creates a barrier to understanding. We just want to hear it and apply it. Hear it and apply it. Hear it and apply it, and apply it to what? Everything. Everything that could possibly come into our head. We invite you in this space, if and only if you're led to, and if you're comfortable, and if you're led and if you're comfortable, to know this is a safe space to reveal any guilty, shameful burdens that you wish to share with complete non judgment in the class. It's an essential step to freedom from the ego. Class is not the place to do that for everybody. It wasn't for me for a long time, and it's okay. It's okay. But to have the space, to have the safe space to know that no matter what you share, that no matter what you open up about, that you won't be judged or attacked or looked at weird or looked at funny for sharing that. You won't be looked down or not being spiritual enough or not being a good Course in Miracle student by sharing something that you've been burdened by, that the world would judge as wrong. You can trust that you won't be attacked or looked at weird here in this space. I can promise you that. It's so important to carve out the space, even if people don't share here, that they carve out the space with intention to have that space with spirit to open up, because really our exposing the ego is with the Holy Spirit Jesus. From that place we will be led how to open up from there. But the honesty, the deep inner honesty, the inventorying of our guilts, of our shames, of our burdens that we've been carrying in our closets that we feel we can't open it up. The inventorying, the clarifying of that for us has to be done with the Holy Spirit Jesus for us to be able to then open up about it on some level, however that looks for you, and however you're led by the Spirit to do that, for us to then free ourselves of that guilty identity. We are the perfect light of God, but we don't believe it because we think we are guilty, sinful SOBs that deserve to suffer, as proven by the guilt that we've been harboring in our closets that we're afraid of confronting. This is precisely how the ego stays in charge. This is precisely how the ego's security door stays shut, through that appearance, through that scary front of guilt, of darkness that we have always been afraid to look at and go into, and especially open up about. So, but it must be done. We must go into that to be able to free ourselves and give ourselves the perfect happiness and the perfect joy, which is freely given us as the Spirit of God, as the perfect love of God. We have to confront our false identity in this worldly belief that says that we're guilty, sinful bodies tied to time forever, and we can't get rid of that story that we're so ashamed of. And we better watch out for the people in the future that might find out about that story, because then we're going to feel really bad about ourselves, to then reinforce the guilty identity that we've inherited and believed in the first place. You see the loop there? So the only way we can get out of that loop is the Holy Spirit Jesus. The only way we can get out of that is deep inner honesty with ourselves and the Holy Spirit Jesus, to say, show me that this story that I'm so afraid of. Show me, Holy Spirit Jesus, that this story, this accumulation of thoughts and beliefs and stories and things that I thought that I did was so bad, or other people I thought that was so bad that they did to me, that is not who I am. Show me, because I'm believing that that story is me. I'm believing that I have to suffer because I'm so guilty that I'm giving myself the suffering to prove to myself that I deserve what I'm getting for myself. Show me that that story is not who I am. Show me, Holy Spirit Jesus, that that story is just a story, an accumulation of thoughts that I've invested in, that I believe is me, but it's not who I am. Show me that my story is not me. My story is not my identity. My story is not the perfect light of God. Show me. But we have to come to that place of honesty, of submitting those things and being clear with those things that we're burdened and weighed down by and haven't been able to open up about, with Holy Spirit Jesus, with great clarity and great honesty and great openness and great willingness. Clarity, openness, honesty, willingness is required to bring that stuff to the light, to then walk into it with the hand of Holy Spirit Jesus on our hearts, taking us through that scary stretch and liberating us at the end of that tunnel. Our part is the willingness and the bravery to do it and to go into it, and to know and to trust and to build that trust that we are supported, we are loved unconditionally, we are supported unconditionally, we are embraced unconditionally, and no matter what we thought we did in our stories, which is not us, no matter what we thought we did in our accumulation of beliefs that have made us so weighed down by guilt, which is not who we are, it's just an accumulation of belief, that we are embraced, we are supported, and we are loved 100% unconditionally by the love of God, by the Spirit, by Jesus. And that is our practice as Course in Miracles students who practice. The purpose is to be non-compromising, speaking of all those beliefs that we accumulated, and not exclude 1 inch or hair or speck of a hair of the beliefs that we've accumulated from the light of Holy Spirit. To not exclude anything of holding up those burdensome thoughts, attacking thoughts, guilt-filled thoughts to the light of Holy Spirit. Not exclude anything, because if we exclude anything, guess what? We burden ourselves with it. So we have to be willing to expose all of it and let the Holy Spirit's light completely in our minds. It's really there in truth, but we think it's not because we covered over this false identity called the ego, accumulation of thoughts that keep us distracted and erratic and impulsive. and not being able to focus in on the constant, one steady, unchanging, unalterable, eternal, rock steady truth called the perfect light of God, which is our true identity. And it takes a lot of practice and a lot of discipline to re-identify with that truth that never changes, and to disidentify with the stories. We still live in the world. We still interact in the world. We don't go live in a cave, but we do it from a place of knowing our true identity as spirit, as the light, not from a place of I'm a physical body that must burden itself with all this guilt and shame of the past that I believe is actually me. So it's actually talked tonight about really being able to love the worldly identity Gonzalo, the character of Gonzalo, the figure of Gonzalo, being able to love him from a place of non-guilt, from a place of non-attacking, from a place of eternity, not from a place tied to time. We can't love the self called the person and the personality from the person. The person can't love the person because the person's so invested in guilt. The person Gonzalo can't love Gonzalo the person because Gonzalo's so invested in guilt and shame and tied to the past. So therefore we need to identify and use our imaginations, the power of our minds and our imagination, to identify outside of the self, just for a moment, to identify with the light of spirit, to then shed the light on the character. Identify just for a second outside of this self to the light of God, to shed that light on the figure, on the character of Gonzalo, of ourselves, on the character that can't love itself. Let's identify with the truth of who we are as the light of God, to shed its perfect light on the character, the personality, because it can't do it itself right now. And coming from a place of truth to a place of our worldly non-truth is really the bridge for getting us home. That's the only way we can truly love ourselves, not as the worldly self, but as the perfect light of God, shining that light back on our worldly identity. That's our work. Stepping outside of this for just a moment long enough to shine back on this. Since this is our point of experience, and we can't deny it, we can't fake it, we can't pretend that the perfect light of God is there when we're still experiencing all this worldly shame and attack and fear and guilt. We can't pretend our way to enlightenment. We have to go from where we are. And if we are invested in this worldly identity that is bringing us all this attack and fear and guilt, we have to use our mind and imagination to step out of it and bring the perfect light of God back down to where we are at an experiential level. Thus the practice of not excluding any thought from the perfect light of God, the perfect light of Holy Spirit, to then shower back down on the earth and all of our brothers and sisters to be showered with that perfect light as well. That's where we unify. That's where we unify in that what they call the light of Christ, the light of the one, the light of God. That's where we come together. That's the unity we want. We call it the United States of America, but we're separate as hell. We can only get unity and joining in the perfect light of God that we are. Past these bodies, past the appearances, past the stories of the past the political and the social and the racial and the religious and the non-religious and the zip codes and the professional and demographic differences that mean absolutely nothing to the perfect light of God. We need to really be able to unify ourselves in a higher identity called the light. The only goal, the only purpose that we really have here, the only true goal that we have here is complete release from all attachments, all guilt, all judgments of this world, so we cannot leave any worldly belief, any worldly attack, fear, guilt, shame, any on the other extreme, any worldly happiness, any worldly joy, any worldly pleasure in the world that's based on conditions of getting, based on conditions of people giving me something and people validating me and approving of me. Even that worldly happiness, we can't exclude that from the perfect light of God, because if we do, we're going to continue being addicted to this world's stuff, this world's pleasure, which is not perfect happiness. Perfect happiness does not depend on anything in this world, even a vaccine. Perfect happiness only depends on remembering the perfect light of God that we really are, really knowing that, knowing it, not talking about it and reading about it, but knowing it. We can only get that with practice, and we can only get that by going into the experience, which practice gives us the experience. That's all I got. Looking forward to vacation. I love you. Be the light that you are. Feel the light that you are. Be the light that you are. Feel the light that you are. Be the light that you are. Feel the light that you are. Be the light that you are. Feel the light that you are. Lead me, guide me, lead me, guide me, lead me, guide me. Lead me, guide me, Holy Spirit Jesus. Thank you. Love you. Have a beautiful evening. No class next week for the 24th. I will not be here. The following week, the 31st, I will. Have a lovely evening.